Here we're going to go through some commonly asked questions about outlining, so hopefully this helps clarify any confusion you might have about outlining. So the first question is, how long should my law school outline be? And the answer is there's no real answer. Probably if your outline is 5 pages, it's too short. Probably if it's 300 pages, it's too long. My outlines my 1L year were about 50 to 60 pages. I could have pared those down though. I had a lot of extraneous information when I look back at them. But it doesn't really matter how long your outlines are as long as you're memorizing them and learning them all throughout the semester. So if your outline ends up being a little longer, but you've been memorizing it and learning it, that's fine. Or if it ends up being a little shorter, but you're still paring down and condensing what you learned into class in your outline, that's fine. So there's not really a magic number for your outlines. You just want to make sure that you're working every week to make them and learn them. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't honestly matter how long it is. The only time you might want to be kind of skeptical is if you're outlining something like 5 pages, it might be too short unless you're really condensing everything and paring down the rules, you don't have any hypos or anything like that. That's probably too short for your full outline, so you might be missing some things. If your outline's 300 pages, you're going to be giving yourself a ton of work in terms of memorizing, and you're probably incorporating too much into your outline. So make sure you're not including, like a ton of cases or things that aren't really testable. So there are things you want to keep in mind as you go along, but the basic idea is exactly how long your outline isn't really that important at the end of the day. Okay, next, where can I find law school outlines? Okay, so the best law school outlines you're gonna have are the ones that you write yourself, of course. But if you're looking for other law school outlines, for example, you might find it helpful to have other law school outlines if you struggle with that class. You're not really sure how it's organized. You want to see how other people are organizing their outlines or writing down their ideas. You struggle to figure out what your professor is saying during class, so looking at another outline can help you kind of get the main points of the class. Or it's the end of the semester, you put off outlining, you need to find somebody else's outline to work with. So there are reasons you might want to look at other people's outlines. You don't need to. I didn't have anyone's outline until I was in my second semester of my 2L year. I never looked at any other outlines, but I could see then how it was valuable to look at some. So if you're looking for an outline, you can ask your friends, particularly upperclassmen. This is why it's good to be involved in some extracurricular activities, because you might meet someone who took the same class from your same professor, and so they might have a good outline for you. And remember, you do want to get an outline from your same class from that professor, because that'll be tailored to what you need to know. Second, some law schools have outline banks, or some groups like the women's law group or whatever will have an outline bank amongst themselves, and so they'll publish different outlines and you can get outlines there. Lastly, there's an online resource called the Outline Depot. This has a bunch of outlines. Some of them are not great in quality, some of them are better than others, but you can preview them before you download them, and that's another resource to get law school outlines from your actual professor. Next question, should I use commercial outlines? In general, you shouldn't be memorizing commercial outlines. So you shouldn't, for example, take a supplement and use that as your outline. Instead, you can use them as a source of black letter law, or sometimes commercial outlines are kind of organized in a pretty way so you can kind of understand how concepts fit together, but you shouldn't use them as a substitute for your own outline or as a substitute for an outline from your professor's class. So basically, your best resource is going to be an outline made from your exact professor's class rather than a commercial outline. Do I need to have law school outlines from 2Ls and 3Ls to succeed? No, you really don't. I didn't have any from 2Ls or 3Ls my first semester of law school, and I didn't find that hindered me. In fact, I find that some people now, because outlines are everywhere, they'll have 5 different outlines and they cross-reference them, and honestly, sometimes it can be a disadvantage to have that many outlines. So if you do get an outline from an upperclassman, I would just focus on 1 or 2 outlines and just use them as resources, but don't use them as a substitute for your own outline, and don't over-focus on them. Remember, students created those outlines too, so they're not perfect. That student was creating that outline for themselves, so not necessarily for everybody else to look at. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the semester. So I have my outline. What do I do with my notes, my case briefs, etc.? The nice freeing thing about making an outline is you don't need to look at your notes, you don't need to look at your case briefs, you don't need to look at your casebook, you don't need to look at anything else because everything that you need has been extracted and put into an outline. So you can literally discard it, okay? You can get rid of it completely. What I used to do, because I was paranoid, is of course I'd keep my class notes, my casebook, I'd keep everything, and I'd have it handy, especially if I had an open book or open note exam. I'd want it near me just in case I wanted to consult anything. But in reality, I never did. I just used my outline. And once you have your outline, you can honestly just focus on that. Should I prepare any differently for open book exams? For open book exams, you generally want to learn the law the same way. You want to practice applying the law. Some people get this overconfident sense when they take an open book exam because they think, well, I have my outlines, I can just look up the rules. But honestly, they're harder in some ways than closed book exams because a professor is not going to be super impressed by rule statements if you have an open book exam. Instead, they're going to be looking for a more detailed analysis. So your understanding of the law is going to be very important for an open book exam. So in some ways, they're harder than closed book exams. So don't get a false sense of confidence or don't study for them less. You need to study for them the same. The only real difference between open and closed book exams is for open book exams, you want to make sure you have a nicely tabbed, easy to use outline because you might need to use it on your final exam. Your goal is to never even have to look at your outline, even during an open book final exam. But if you do, you want to be able to use it efficiently. So I would tab your outlines, make it, easy to find information. So organize it well. And then secondly, it might be helpful, especially if you kind of put off studying, to make an attack outline. Basically kind of condense all the rules into just a page or two. This is kind of like what our law school one sheets are. They're just like mini attack outlines for the law. And that's helpful because you have something very quick to reference on your exam. It's really helpful if you did not spend time outlining or learning the law. Making this attack outline at the end of the semester can actually help kind of cement the law and help you internalize it and organize it and memorize it right before the final exam. I didn't make attack outlines in law school because I created and memorized my 50-page outlines, which were not attack outlines. So I didn't feel the need to create another outline or another resource. Some people have short outlines, medium outlines, long outlines for every class. I just had one and that was sufficient. But that's just a way you can actively review the law at the end of the semester, particularly if you haven't been doing it all along.